Well, thank you very much, everybody. I'm Ken Mungan, I'm chairman of Milliman, and I'm delighted to be here today to talk with our panelists about centering the customer at the heart of our innovation efforts. If you think about it, there's not a person walking on this planet who ever bought insurance so that the insurance company could get a 15% ROE or so that they could double revenues in 5 years. What the customer cares about is protecting themselves, their families, the organizations that they're part of. And it's so important that the leaders of our industry keep that in mind, that they start with the customer need first and then innovate to meet that need. So we have just an amazing panel here today with us. We've got starting on my left and working down, we have Angela Assis, the CEO of, oops, I lost my screen, Brazilprev. Wole Ocean, who's Group Managing Director of Custodian Group, and Pablo Sprenger, CEO for Latin America for Principal. So we have this, I think, this panel is going to win the award for most international. So Angela lives in Brasilia, Brazil. Wole is from Lagos, Nigeria, and Pablo lives in Santiago, Chile. So with that, we have a whole bunch of questions to get through, but before we dive into the questions, maybe each of you could just tell us a little bit about yourselves and your company, and then we'll start with the specific questions. Angela, can we start with you?
Okay. First of all, I'm very glad to be here and talk a little about what we've been doing at Brazilprev in order to improve the financial education and protection to Brazilians. And I also like to thank the IIS and Mr. Mozarski for the invitation. Brazilprev is a pension plans company, market leader in Brazil, with more than 2.6 million clients. And we have 2 shareholders, BB Seguros, a Brazilian company, and Principal Financial Group, an American company.
Fantastic. Wole?
I'm Wole Ocean. I'm the founder and group managing director of Custodian Investment PLC. It's a holding financial group in Nigeria that has an interest in life insurance companies, non-life insurance P&C companies, an asset management company, a pension fund administration company. We're also into real estate. I'm not a new face here, and I'm very delighted again to step up here to speak to the topic. I've listened to the various conversations in the last 2 days, and it's been very enlightening, and I do hope I'll be able to contribute to that. Thank you.
Pablo.
Well, hello everyone, I'm Pablo Sprenger. I'm Chilean. I've been working in the financial services industry for the last 25 years. I'm passionate about helping clients to have a better future. This is something that I have been doing in insurance. I work in insurance. I work in a brokerage company, like the dark side of the insurance part of the business. And for the last 20 years, I have been working in asset management and retirement, helping people to save more and have more for the future. That's what we do at Principal Financial Group. Probably you're aware of what Principal is. Principal is a leading company in retirement services and financial services in the world, in the US. And in Latin America, we have operations in Mexico, Brazil, and in Chile. We manage 150-something billions in asset under management. We have almost 10 million clients. And we're committed in developing the capital markets, the financial markets, and working to have more financial inclusion in the region. This is something that we're going to talk about now. So, well, thank you for the invitation, Ken, and let's have a great panel.
Wonderful. All right, let's dive in. Angela, we're going to start with you. So as you talked about, Brazilprev is a leader in the Brazilian open pension plans market in terms of financial volume and number of customers. What does it mean to be a customer-centric company for Brazilprev?
For us, it means to have the client not only in the center of our strategy, but also in our value. We have 5 corporate values in Brazilprev, defined by all the employees of the company, and one of them is client in the center. We always listen to our client, always. We send them a feedback survey after all those interactions in order to deliver more simple and consultative journeys. We've also invested more than $10 million in a CRM tool to follow all our clients' interactions at Brasilprev, as with commercial team, call center, and even during digital access. And this tool, we offer NBA, Next Best Action, reaching more than 30% of effectiveness due to the use of the predictive models. And I think that because of these actions, among others, we've increased our NPS in 25 points in the last 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah, good results.
25 points, that's fantastic.
Yes, good results.
And I love how you described that the company values were defined by the employees of the company.
Yes.
I think that's so important, rather
employees.
than just having it handed to them from some
Yes, of
corporate communications department, for example.
Yes, more engagement
Yeah.
also. Yes.
Wow.
And client
Right.
is one of them. Client the center.
Great. Well, Wally, let's shift gears and talk about the African market. In what ways has the African market gained from designing products with a strong focus on customer needs?
Okay, let me take, Africa as a whole for those that may not know too much about Africa, because that serves as the market. There are 1.5 billion people in Africa, and 60% of these people are under the age of 25. So roughly about 900 million people are under the age of 25. Insurance penetration is less than 1% across Africa, so there's a huge upside and a lot of work to do. But whether we'll be able to actually grow the pie, I think is part of the reasons why we are talking today. So there's been penetration because of the activities of innovation in the last couple of years, but it's not been significant. And I think that there's still more work to do. But it has helped in the area of awareness, because in the African market, you still have so many areas that we have to reach out to, interlands, villages, that are challenged by, infrastructure, but innovation through insurance has helped in terms of education and in terms of awareness. Again, affordability is an issue. That has been solved because of products that have been introduced. We have products that are now introduced, pay-as-you-go, instrumental payments, and these have really helped in terms of acquisition of insurance. And because of this, also trust, which is very, very important, in Africa, has also been dealt with. We're still work in progress. But because of the gains that we've made over the last couple of decades, we've been able to grow trust amongst the market that we have there. Of course, again, it's helped in the area of savings. It has enabled savings, some of the products, life insurance products, and some of the, cooperative type products have helped in the area of savings. So by and large, we've made baby steps. That's the way I'll put it. There's still a lot of work to do. It's really big, and I think this is a forum where everybody can be challenged. Africa is barren, and there's still a lot of work to do where insurance penetration is concerned. Yeah.
Yeah, I think as we look around to different markets, the demographic trends in Africa are really the most attractive right now. We often talk about aging societies, declining birth rates. Africa is the opposite of that.
Yeah.
And you hit on exactly the concept that is most important, which is trust. Yeah. And so thank you for everything you're doing to solve that for people. Wonderful. Pablo, let's move the conversation to the area of financial inclusion. So Principal's done a recent study, and financial inclusion in Latin America is improving significantly. So what are the key factors that are driving that change?
Okay, well, we have this study called the Global Financial Index, which measures and ranks 41 markets, both developed and developing markets. And why financial inclusion should be something relevant for us, for the insurance industry, for the financial services industry? Well, because there's this correlation between clients demanding insurance products, savings products, when they are more financially included. So if they have a banking account, the chances of they buying an insurance is 4 times higher than if they don't have a banking account. So this is something related to the sustainability of our industry, of our businesses. What's financial inclusion? Well, it's the affordable access to transactions, payments, credits, savings, and insurance. That's what it is, defined by the World Bank. Offered in a responsible and in a sustainable way. And we have been measuring that in many, many countries, and we saw in the last couple of years a rise, an improvement in particularly Latin American countries. So we know that the top 10 countries are usually the usual suspect. Singapore is number 1. Then you have the Northern European countries. Then you have the US. In the bottom 10, you have, like Wally said, the challenges in certain countries in Africa and Latin America used to be in the bottom 10. Financial inclusion is increasing because of the emergence of fintechs and insurtech companies. That's having a huge impact. We measure the index including government efforts, employers' efforts, and financial system and industry efforts. Well, what's driving the change is the financial system efforts that we saw. I can give you an example. My mother, before the pandemic, never bought anything through internet. Now she buys everything. She's 75. So, and this is a good example of what has technology to say in financial inclusion. And then it's us. What are we doing to foster that development? Well, we're doing slightly new things. We are opening to competition. We're opening to new entrants, but we need to do more because it's in our own interest to help financial inclusion to increase. So we saw an incredible growth in Argentina. I don't know if it's any Argentinian person here, but then Argentina is making good noise, finally. We saw an increase in Chile and in Mexico, mostly related to fintechs and slightly to the employer commitment. So we are starting to see a change and good news, and this will definitely bring opportunities for the industry.
That's fantastic. I love how you hit on the role of technology and just driving down the cost and also the barriers and getting it to the point where your mom is buying everything on the internet now, and she's probably got your credit card
Absolutely.
in the
That's
app.
the problem.
You know, so, well, let's talk about financial inclusion in Africa. How can financial inclusion strategies help close the insurance gap in Africa, particularly where the insurance penetration rate is today?
So, well, what has happened is, well, typically, of course, it's about disposable income. That's a huge challenge. Insurance is always at the bottom of the shopping list. So microinsurance is one of the strategies that has been used, because it's affordable. You have flexible payments, and people are able to identify with that. So it's been able to penetrate, at least address some aspects, of the market. In terms of products, you have products like pay-as-you-go insurance, mobile telephony, where you have airtime being used to pay for life insurance, to pay for health insurance. So these are products that have helped. In terms of education and awareness also, that's also important. because the more knowledge that is being passed on as to what insurance is, that helps in terms of closing the gap that exists. So education and awareness is something that we've done. In my company, for instance, we have a weekly program on radio where we choose a topic and we have call-ins. People asking questions about insurance, how do you treat claims, how do you, so that's really helped. And in some instances, we also have the more rural one, which is what we call a market storm. We go into local markets with a bus and we speak to the marketing people there, the low-income people, about insurance. So these are all ways in which we've been able to do that. And then, of course, there's the access to credit, which will help. I'm going to speak to that, hopefully, on the converse, because I think that's also one of the greatest challenges that we have in Africa. Access to credit is a problem. But with access to credit, I think that will also help, in closing the gap. And of course, this morning, I think somebody spoke about the partnership with government, the public-private sector. I think that will help, because with government, they're able to take on insurances that typically would not have been taken on by private companies, like especially parametric insurance, paying for flood and disasters. I was talking to the IDP lady, and she was telling me how Lagos State, where I come from, are actually taking on insurance. Now they're developing a product for flood, and these areas that, would also help. Lastly, I think having the regulator also involved will go a long way, in helping. Having a uniform in Africa, we now have, sort of having compulsory insurances. So motor insurance, for instance, is compulsory. Certain aspects of health insurance is now compulsory. These all help to deepen and to sort of like close the gap. I think with all this and with more efforts, especially on the government side, the commitment from the regulators will get there. Wow. Yeah.
That's amazing. It's not like there's, do this one thing and you solve the financial inclusion problem. No, you must have just listed off 15 different things there, and it's like pushing on a broad front. That's absolutely amazing. Yeah. Let's shift gears. Angela, you're the only woman to lead an open pension plans company in the Brazilian market. So what is the diversity agenda at Brasilprev, and how does diversity influence your business?
We believe that diversity brings a better diversity of lifestyle, gender, age, etc. Brings a more creative and engaging environment. So this is good for the business, of course. And we usually build up teams with people from different areas and backgrounds to deal with the company's most important issues. At the moment, we have teams dealing with complaints, retention, and sustainability. And all of them are showing positive results. In 2022, we defined clear ESG goals to be reached in 2026. And talking specifically about inclusion and diversity, I believe that we need to take action instead of just talking. So because of that, we defined specific metrics for women in leadership roles and for people of color. We've developed a specific leadership mentoring program prioritizing women, and we've created a hiring process focused on people of color. We also support initiatives for those 60 plus and against age discrimination. And by the way, we've been awarded the age-friendly certification. Yeah. And it's also important to highlight that we also consider ESG criteria when choosing our suppliers. It's very important for us.
That's
so many actions.
Wonderful. Pablo and Wole, maybe you could add your comments in terms of the role diversity plays in your company. Pablo, can we start with you?
Okay, well, and it's great. By the way, what Banco do Brasil and Brasilprev does in Latin America, and particularly in Brazil, is a leading example. It's impressive. Starting from the CEO, well, you have here the CEO of BB Seguros, well, he will be later talking to you. And yeah, the commitment with diversity is impressive. And it's relevant because in Latin America, we have a talent. There's a talent of equity in gender inclusion, in people with color, in people from different social classes. So companies like ours need to have a strong commitment in helping delivering this, because again, this panel is called customer-centric value. How can we offer customer centricity if we're not representing every customer in our organization? So it started with us. Particularly in principle, we have a strong commitment with inclusion and gender equality, gender equity. So, for example, in Latin America, 55% of our employees are women. You say, hey, maybe this is easy, you have sales teams, but in the executives team, here I was counting 1/3 of the group here are women. In principle, in Latin America, which is a very conservative region, 45% of our executives are women. So we're really committed with this. And I was in a panel last week with one of the employees resources group from Principal, which tried to support this process of inclusion. And I said that it started with us, with the example. So you have to walk the talk. That's the English way to say it. You have to walk the talk. So if you're going to be committed with this, you need to start showing commitment and impact and results. And that's what we're doing. So it's a long process, particularly in regions like Latin America, in which still women are facing other challenges. You have a lot of kids. You have less access to high school, to university. So it's a long process, but I think that we are in the right path.
All right. Making progress.
Step by step.
Wole, any comments on diversity?
Sure. In Nigeria, for instance, apart from regulatory requirements, because the regulator has intervened in the space of diversity. Internally, for my board, for instance, we have 40% are women. The chairperson is a woman. We have an academy in which we bring in fresh graduates on an annual basis. And we're seeing naturally a statistical shift. In fact, we're getting worried that we may not have guys moving forward, because what we have now, most of the time, the intake we're getting is about 60 to 70% are women. So the organization is really being filled up with, and there's great advantage to that, because I've worked closely with women at the board level, at the management level. The way they view issues and their commitment to issues really helps the progress of the organization. But that's not where it ends. We also have inclusivity with a younger generation. So even at the board level, we are very mindful of the fact that we don't have demographics of a particular age. We have people that are slightly younger, and that also cascades all the way down into management and into the entire system. So it's deliberate, it's intentional, and I must say that we're actually seeing the results of this.
And at my company, we're seeing very similar situation as you described. It's like it varies so much based on time. Like right now, when you look at the leadership, you're really looking at what was exciting happening 20 years ago in the company. But if you look at what's exciting happening today, it's disproportionately women. And then also when I talk to those women, the story has changed so much. It's one where both partners are kind of co-equal parents, if you will, and it's leveled the playing field and completely changed the dynamic within the organization.
Yeah.
So Paulo, let's go on and just talk about sort of increasing the use of insurance. So regardless of the significant growth, the actual penetration rates across financial services like insurance products and asset management still remain pretty low. So what can the industry do to increase that size of the pie in terms of the number of customers that use the solutions that we offer?
Yeah, probably this is the biggest challenge and at the same time the biggest opportunity. I don't know, how many of you have operations in Latin America? Can you raise your hands? 1, 2. Well, the other ones should. Well, Andre, of course, you're Latin American, like me. So, but Latin America is currently the region that is growing the most in premiums and in asset under management. So insurance and asset management, both industries are showing the fastest growth across the world. So it's the right region to be in. Of course, as Ken was mentioning, penetration rates are still pretty low. So 3% of GDP is the insurance average in Latin America compared to 15 in developed countries. 15% of the people have life insurance compared to almost 50% in the US. Less than 25% of the cars have insurance compared to 70% in the US. So yes, still is a market to be developed, but that's opportunity. The question is how? How can we actually increase the pie? Because what you see in Latin America is that the big companies, the big global companies, are competing with the other big global companies. That it's a fierce competition. And the regional companies compete with the other regional companies, and the local with the local. So let's compete from attributes to get one client from your company to my company, instead of trying to increase the pie. And there are a lot of studies. I think that the CEO of Mapfre, or I don't know if it's here, it was here yesterday, they share a very interesting report that shows that the potential need of gross weighted premiums in Latin America today is around 500 billion. Currently, we have less than 200 billion. So the gap is 2.5 times the gap, the challenge, or the opportunity, depending on how you want to see it. And I think that the challenge that we all have is to actually disrupt what we're doing. If you try to remember how we saw movies, either it was on a theater, or a movie theater, or you have to wait to see if the movie was on TV at 5 p.m. in the channel that you had. Then you had Blockbuster, now you have Netflix, and then you have something else. If you look at an insurance branch, 25 years ago, 15 years ago, and today, probably, and you take a picture, the only thing that changed is the quality of the picture. It's quite similar. You have certain changes, but it's the pixels of the picture, the actual change. So what are we actually doing to increase the pie? First, we talk about financial inclusion. That's key. We need to work on financial inclusion because it's in our best interest. So let's have more clients into banks. Bank assurance represent, in relative terms, 2 times more of the revenues in Europe than in Latin America, in relative terms. So it's the gap, or the opportunity, again, is huge. So recommendations: products, massive products, microinsurance. That's the opportunity in Latin America. Experience, simplicity. It's critical. Latin America is, I don't know if we still are, but 5 years ago, we were the region with the highest penetration of cell phones and social networks from the world, number 1. So products, and finally, my recommendation is to embrace the change and take advantage of the, today, more than 500 insurtech companies that are only operating in Latin America. So that's a way to increase the pie.
Fantastic. Angela and Wole, what thoughts do you have? What's one or two strategies to increase the size of the pie, bring more customers in?
I agree
Angela?
with Pablo when he talks about the financial inclusion, but I believe that we need first to improve financial education, therefore financial awareness. Talking about Brazil and maybe Latin America, we need to widen the corporate pension plans market because it's small these days. And I think we have also to deliver more simple and affordable products to the clients. These are three actions that I think that will help to increase the market in Latin America.
Fantastic.
Okay, interesting. I share some of Pablo's views. And I think it was also said yesterday at some point in time from a McKinsey report that nothing is really growing in terms of premiums to GDP. And I think that is all across Africa. A lot of things that we've been doing, because when I look back, I've been in the insurance industry for decades, and it's always been about expanding the market share, innovation and new products. You find that it's actually quite difficult, to come up with products that people embrace, fully without any intervention. We were taught in school in those days that insurance is never sold. It's never bought, but it is sold. So that tells you that there's a natural barrier to the products that we are selling. What I've seen happen year in, year out is the improvement in service delivery. We've talked about AI, we've talked about data analytics. All these things are going to improve service delivery. But growing the pie, I suspect we will have to sit and embed our products on fintechs that have gained tremendous speed and coverage, across markets, with maybe selling credit life insurance, on loans that are being given in 2 minutes, and things like that. We have to sit on platforms, but as a standalone, I'm not sure how we're going to grow this market. We need to re-strategize and sort of like hide, and embed ourselves under other products that are somewhat compulsory. I think products have to be compulsory or forced for insurance to thrive. In its natural state, I'm not sure anything is going to happen. It's just going to stay there.
Excellent. All right, let's shift gears and now talk about some demographic trends. And Angela, if we could start with you. So as in many countries, the average age of the Brazilian population is increasing. What is the Brazilian context on this topic, and how is that affecting the private pension plan market?
We are aging very fast in Brazil. In 20 years, we've doubled the population 60 plus, while in France, it took 100 years to happen. So we have in Brazil a public pension system. And this process has brought a huge impact on this social system. And the forecast is that in 2051, the country will have more retirees than contributors on this public pension system. So it's a very concerned scenario. And I think that we have, again, two main actions as market: to improve financial education and to deliver more affordable products because of our huge low-income population. And in my opinion, it's also crucial that the government give fiscal incentives for the companies to provide pension plans company to their employees. In Brazil, only big companies have these incentives. And in my opinion, this is the only way to reach the low-income people, to widen the market, foster the economy, and help the public system.
Excellent. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Like having the public policy that gives the incentives and gets people into the system
Yeah.
is so crucial
That's
because
the point.
everyone is aging.
Everyone
it's
is
not,
aging.
It's not just that the people that work for a huge company are aging and
everyone
others
is
are.
aging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wole and Pablo, how are demographic trends affecting the business from your perspective? Wole, can we start with you?
Well, like I said, in Nigeria, I'll take Nigeria for instance. Africa has roughly about 60% under 25. Nigeria has about 75%. Now, so that's contrary to what she's talking about. And we actually do have the same kind of pension system, so, and I started wrapping my head around it, that when are we going to get to the stage where, those that are exiting are more than those that are coming in, so, so the products that we tend to look at for the future are more tech-based. All the fintechs, most of the fintechs are young people under 35. They're the guys running the unicorns. They're the ones, and they're making huge gains. I was with a young man last week in Nigeria who founded a unicorn. And his revenues, his transaction turnover last year was close to $300 billion. And that's in Nigeria alone. And I was talking to him about insurance, about how can we sit on some of these transactions and, deliver protection to his customers. So demographic-wise, I think we're seated well. It's for us to position ourselves with the products of the future. So I was quite interested when we were talking about the future. We are really looking at the future when it comes to product design. Yeah.
Pablo?
Well,
thoughts on demographic trends?
That's very interesting what Wole and Angela just shared. Maybe to add a little bit to the conversation, it's that Latin America is still a young region. So we are starting to get older, but we're still, in relative terms, like Africa, a region with opportunities. Probably the challenge is that we can rely only on the demographic bond to expect economic growth. And that's something that we're already seeing in many countries, in particular in our region. So we're not, for commodities, there are other factors, but those 6 to 7 to 8% growth of GDP year by year are no longer the situation in Latin America. And part of that is because we are not increasing our labor force and our productivity. So labor force is not growing. Informal workers in Latin America represent 50% of the total workers, 50, so compared to 10% in the US. So we're an informal region still, and we're not productive. So the challenge that the demographic is bringing, beside on what Angela and Wole mentioned, is for economic growth and labor market. So how are we going to fix this? Again, thinking as an industry, which is key for the economic growth. Yeah. We're in the financial industry. We inject capital into the system. Capital markets works because we exist. Insurance companies and their reserves are invested, again, in government papers, in corporate papers. It's what we do. So we need to be super involved in this process. And demographics is a challenge, again, but I prefer to talk about opportunities. We are an aging population in Latin America. We're still young, but we're bringing a new set of clients, the retirement people. Today, for example, my mother again.
You still get your credit card.
Absolutely. No, but for example, she has an insurance. And it's not that hard to get an insurance for a 70-year-old person, but for her, the experience is awful because now everything is virtual. We are all reducing cost, and it seems that customer centricity again, it seems that we're not thinking in every segment. And we have a new emerging segment, at least in Latin America, that needs a different experience, which is retired people that are starting to learn how to deal and relate with technology. So those are the opportunities that we need to start seeing, and probably the companies that, as Brazil Prev, for example, and others that start doing things, focusing each of the segment clients are going to be the one that will help financial inclusion and will, by the end, be the winners of the market.
Wonderful. All right, let's shift gears and talk about artificial intelligence. We've all been through many discussions at AI. I just want to set the stage, and then I'll ask Pablo to lead off with some comments on AI. My view is that a major impact of AI in the insurance industry is going to get right to what Wole talked about. You said a phrase that I have heard my entire career. I've been working in the insurance industry since 1991, which was coincidentally the same year that you founded Custodian in Nigeria. And we've always heard insurance is sold, not bought. And my hope is that AI ultimately actually inverts that. We're spending a lot of time today looking at AI. How do you use AI to make this process inside the insurance company 7% more efficient? But I think the opportunity is actually going to be, how do the customers use AI to better protect themselves? And if each potential customer starts using AI, and then we have AI reaching out to insurance companies and actually buying insurance, that changes things dramatically. And so, all of your companies are starting to try to get your hands around AI. Pablo, what thoughts do you have in terms of how AI is going to change our industry?
Well, the previous panel was talking a lot about AI, and definitely they were experts. The future of AI probably is how you're imagining Ken. But I'm a business-oriented, short-term executive, and the presence of AI is probably making a lot of noise and a lot of expectations. But I would love to hear your experience and see if you're getting actual value. And the fact is that if we want to start getting value from AI, we need to invest in data. AI runs on data. That's what we need. So if you're a poor data-driven company, you're going to be a poor AI-driven company. That's what we need today. And sadly, most of the companies are very poor in terms of data, the data lake, how each of the database talk to each other. And probably, as you mentioned, that 7% of efficiency, the boring stuff, are going to be the short-term stuff that we will get. And I have an example. I was in an event at BlackRock. I know that BlackRock is one of the sponsors. If somebody from BlackRock is here, so forgive me if I share some confidential material, but it's not. The best example they have, BlackRock, right? It's like the asset management in the world, the biggest of the biggest. Well, the best example of AI impact that they have is the savings of translation of documents. So they were spending tens of millions, tens of million dollars, like $12 or $15 million in translating documents. Well, they reduced that with AI to less than 1 million. So those boring stuff are the things that we need to start using in order to learn more about AI, because everyone is imagining, me too, by the way, I love technology. But it seems that, particularly in our industry, for some reason, consumers prefer to talk to someone, at least the first time they're going to buy an insurance, and a saving plan, a retirement plan. And that's something that is really hard to replace so far. Actually, and with this I finish, I was in an event with the head of AI in Stanford, a smart guy. And I asked him, well, how do you say the industry of asset management is going to be disrupted? And he said, it's going to be completely disrupted. And we were all like, oh my God. The only thing that this head of AI of Stanford said, the only thing that I don't see being disrupted is the financial advisor. I don't see that. Yeah. And we like and we trust people. So that's something that I think it's going to be still the situation, at least while we're human, probably.
Very good. Wooly, thoughts on
Yeah.
AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's hit the nail on the head. You know, at the end of the day, AI is going to improve our processes, going to improve our systems. It will help with customer retention, you know. But moving forward and trying to envision where we're going to get to, I think it may occur maybe in a decentralized system where both the customer and the underwriters, you know, are taking decisions and designing products that suit the customer. I don't know how that is going to happen, but from what you said, I suspect that is how it's going to happen. I mean, we have a charge in my office on a digitization program, and you know, the mandate was switch around where we were before, where we had 70% human back office, human back office and 30% IT. So we're trying to turn the clock around now such that we have 70% IT, 30% human at the back. And that's ongoing. And that means we're going to have a 24-hour office. The machine is going to be speaking to potential clients, marketing them, and asking for what they want, and so on and so forth. I see AI working there, but then it's still going to speak to somebody. And that's what he says. They want to talk to somebody. So the machine will keep disturbing you, telling you, oh, we noticed you have life insurance, but you don't have motor insurance. Why don't you buy a motor insurance product? Now, it now still depends on whether the person is going to respond or not. You know, so, but we will have to keep knocking on the door and looking for ways in which AI is going to ultimately break the jinx in the insurance industry. And I think it's when we actually empower the client. In other words, hand over design and construction to the client.
Yeah.
I think that's the time the thing is going to, as long as we are the ones pushing it out there, I suspect it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And how appropriate for a panel talking about customer-centric values.
Yeah.
So that's great. Angela?
I have just one thing to add, and I agree. As people like to talk to people, I think that the most, and in my experience at Brasilprev, I think that one of the most important things in AI is help us customize our products, our offers, our communication, reaching more effectiveness and bringing more people to the system. Yeah. For me, this is the most important thing.
Well, I think all of your comments bring up this, fundamental question with respect to AI. As Pablo said, people like that in-person reaction. Will the technology get to a point where people are actually comfortable talking with a robot? And and it just brings to mind an episode that happened to me personally. It was my wife and I we were having a little bit of an argument, and this argument actually took place over the cell phone. We were texting back and forth, and she texted me and she said, you have no emotions. You are a robot. And I texted back, I am not a robot, end of transmission. And so on that thought, we're going to end our panel. Let's thank our panel.